Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I go by Hiram or Bogwa. So today I'll be covering operators, and we'll look at different types of operators that you can utilize in Java. Operators are key whenever it comes to building logic in Java. So these are things you will need to practice and kind of understand how they work. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'll start by creating the class. Main method. And then I'll just print out a statement. Okay, now the first thing that I'll do is I'll define a few variables. I'm going to utilize the primitive variables. Okay, now the first operator is something that you already know now, and that's the assignment operator, and that's just basically just equals. Let's first start by looking at the arithmetic operators. So the first one that we'll look at is the addition operators. So here, as you can already guess, I'm going to say sum equals val1 plus val2. We start off by assigning that value 0, not O. So basically, the first one that we start with is the summation operator, and that's basically a plus. And then we assign the value after the computation of value 1 plus value 2 to sum. And let's print it out. Let's go ahead and compile the code just to see. And there it is. Next, we'll look at the subtraction. And as you can already guess, it's just basically minus. Let's go ahead and compile it and run it. I'll actually just utilize one variable, and I'll just call it answer. So let's look at multiplication, right? That is. And then let's look at division. So that's the division operator. And let's compile and run it. And there it is. Now, one thing to note, whenever we divide 234 by 22, the value should be 10 point something. But what we get on our results is 10. And that's because we're using an int as the storage, right? And as you can remember in the primitive variable lesson, int does not store decimal place values. So if you wanted to display the decimal place values too, you would just change this from an int to a double, right? Because remember, our double can be like 0.0, right? So now, if we run that again, as we can see, that. But why is it still 10.0, right? That's because an int, right, divided by an int, it's still outputting an int. So you have to cast this to be like a double. So we can cast that to a double to get the decimal place values, which is why it's important to know the data type that you're using. If you use an int, you completely drop those decimal place values. But if you want those decimal place values, you have to use the appropriate data type, right? So let's compile it and see. And in this instance, we get the full value. Next, we'll look at the modulus operator. Let's compile, and I'll explain it. And that returns 14. So what the modulus operator does for us is it returns the remainder of the division, right? So if we were to look, let's pull out a calculator. If we were to look at 234, let's see, the answer that we got was 14. So if we were to look at 234 minus 14, right, you get 220. And then divide that by 22, I think that was we get a solid 10. And when it comes to getting that remainder, we use a percent sign. Next, we'll look at increment and decrement. I'll define a new variable. X equals 30.
And then system, the out, the print line.
So here I'll do plus plus x. So that's the pre-increment. And in this instance, what it's going to do, it's going to add 1 to the x before using the x, right? So let's run it. And there it is. We have 31. Now, as you can guess, there's a post. See, we have the pre-increment, we have the post-increment. Now I printed 32 because they added. So now let's say instead of running this here, let's comment that out. We ran it here. We're getting 31. If we look for the post increment, what that says is return the x first, use the x, use the value that's in x currently, and then after you've executed this line, I want you to add 1 to it. So the pre-increment you add before using the value. The post-increment you add after using the value. There's also decrement. We'll do x minus minus. Right. I'll actually define a new variable and I'll call it y. And as you can already guess, it works the same. So here we decrement. And there it is. And that covers decrement and increment operators. Now again, the key thing to remember is the pre and post. So next, we'll look at the comparison operators. So let's define it here. I'd like to do true flag, right, is true. Here I'll do is true equals, so we can use value 1 equals value 2, value 1. So this is the equal to operator. And as you can see, it's double equals. Now, it's good to note the difference between the equals of assignment and the equal to of comparison, right? So the equals, when I'm assigning a value, I use a single equals, right? And whenever I'm comparing two values, if they're equal, I use a double equal. Let's print that out. Something different. let's compile that. As you can see, that returns true because val1 is equal to val1. Next, we'll look at the not equal to operator, right? Now, as you can guess, val1 does not equal val1. That will be false because val1 equals val1. So in this instance, that's going to return false because the two values do actually equal. And it returns false. Next, we'll look at the greater than. And we'll do val1 is greater than val2. That will be true because val1 is greater than val2. Now go ahead and finish them off first before executing it. The next operator is val1 is less than val2. Val1 less than val2, that will be false because val1 is larger than val2. And remember, val1, 234, val2, 22. And let's actually modify these statements a little bit to be able to read them a little bit better. There it is, and we can see 234 is equal to 234, true. 234 is not equal to 234, that's false. 234 is greater than 22, true. 234 is less than 22, false. So now let's look at is greater than or equal to and is less than or equal to. So the difference is we have that equals there, less than or equal to, right? So let's compile it and see. And 234 is equal. Okay, so let's fix that. Checking val1. So let's compile it and see. 234 is greater than or equal to 234. That's true because the value is equal. Same thing for 22. So is val1 greater than or equal to, let's do val2. So in this instance, it should return true because val1 is greater than val2, right? And in this instance, if we're to do less than, val2 is less than or equal to val1. It should return true because val2, which was 22, is less than 234. Let's do something and compile. There's an error here, but I want you to see it. Why is it throwing that error? It's because those values are already defined in the method. So another important thing to know is you can only define a variable once, right? So I have to name it differently or not define it. So anytime I put a type before that value, I'm redefining that variable. and if it's defined within that block of code, so within this curly braces, right, that variable can only be defined once. I can't redefine it again. So one thing I can do is just remove the definition, and basically now I'm just saying use the variable that we already defined. Don't redefine a new one. If I have that boolean there, I'm saying define a new variable. But if we've already defined it, there's no point of redefining it. Let's execute and see now. Right? 234 is greater than or equal to 222. Greater than or equal to 22. True. 22 is less than or equal to 234. True. Next, we'll look into assignment operators. Now we've already done one, which is the equals, but there are actually more assignment operators that we can work with. So let's define the variable. So let's do test val plus equals 2. And let's print out the value. So essentially what we're doing here, we're going to take the value that we already have on this variable, and we're going to add a 2 to it and then reassign that to the test value. So as you can already guess, this should print out 32. And there you go, prints out 32. Now, if we have a plus equals, of course, we're going to have a minus equals, multiply equals, divide equals, and modulus equals, and then just continue on like that. So let's do that. So let's execute this and see. Let me actually fix this first. So minus equals times equals divide equals modulus equals. So let's modify this a little bit. Let's just get rid of this. So we start with 30 and we plus 2. We plus 2, it's 32, right? We minus 2, that's 30. We multiply by 2, 60. We divide by 2, 30. We take modulus of 2. And remember, modulus is the remainder. It's going to be 0. But let's see if we were to modulus of 3. Let's actually do 5. 7. There you go. Because I think at this point it's like 30. And there we have 2. Modulus of 7. And that's the basics of assignment operators. So that's the basics of assignment operators, and there are a few other ones, but for now I wanted to just cover those. The other ones, I'll cover them in a different video together with the logical operators, and also getting a little bit in depth into Boolean logic. Thank you for watching my tutorials. Give it a thumbs up if you like it, and subscribe if you haven't, and also check me out on Instagram at coderush.io.